Wow. Wow. Isn't that amazing? A boy who had not even been called by God yet was used to bring judgment to Eli's family. Eli, the high priest of Israel. And what Laura didn't read, because I didn't send it to her, because I wanted to say in the end, Eli says, Samuel, tell me everything God said to you, and don't leave a word out. And Samuel tells him that his whole family is going to be devastated. And Eli says, so be it. It's my fault. I know it's coming. Her name was Shug Avery. Anybody heard that name, Shug Avery? Laura, you know who that is, don't you? You've heard the name.
Color Purple.
Shug Avery, one of my favorite movies, The Color Purple. What you don't see during the whole movie is the relationship between Shug and the parish priest, the preacher. What happens is Shug has this wonderful talent. And she gets fame. She gets notoriety. She goes out. She's partying. She's drinking. She's singing in clubs. And the whole movie, all these other things are going on around her. But every so often, Shug comes in a big shiny car or with a fur coat or all these trappings. And at the end of the movie, I'm going to ruin it for you if you haven't seen it, but it's something you should see. Because at the end of the movie, Shug is singing on the swamp there, a little bayou area, where they've put a juke joint. If you're from the South, you know what a juke joint is. They put a juke joint in there, and Shug is singing. And as she's singing, and all the band's playing around her, and the people are dancing, all of a sudden you hear a choral sound. Speak, Lord. Speak to me, Lord. And then all of a sudden, Shug listens. She stops. And in the Baptist church down the road, her father has been preaching. And all of a sudden, the choir hears this music coming from the juke joint. And somebody says, let's sing. God's trying to tell you something. Speak to me, Lord. And then it gets into, God's trying to tell you something right now. And then Shug and the whole band, everybody at the juke joint, start traipsing through the fields, cornfields, through the mud, through the dirt, and then they come into the church. God's trying to tell you something right now. But as we see in this story, here's Samuel. He's a boy of only 12 years old. Now, where did Samuel come from? Does anybody know the story of Samuel? How he was born? How he was conceived? Yeah, it comes back to you. Remember? His mother wanted a child. And she prayed and prayed, God, I want a child. Please give me a child. Yet she never had a child. God, please. She was in the temple every day. Give me a child, God. And finally she says, God, if you give me a child, I promise you I will give him back to you. And God heard her plea. And he gave her a child. And she, true to her word, brought this child back to the temple. And Samuel was a servant in the temple, serving Eli, the prophet, the priest, Eli. 12 years. And as he lay there, he would lay in the temple and he would sleep. And he heard. You know, the sad thing about this is Eli was the priest. He was the one who was supposed to hear from God. Look at this. Eli. Oh, he's the priest. And if I get anything out of this that's wonderful to me, I'm telling you that each one of you here can hear from God. There's nothing worse to me to have someone stand up in front of a congregation and say, God said for you to do this, God said for you to do that, God said for you to do this, and this is how you're supposed to do it. And you're sitting there, really? He didn't tell me that. I didn't hear from him. Now, if that's the case, there's two things going on. First of all, God didn't say it. Or, second of all, God said it and you wasn't listening. And here's the thing. If you listen to the words from Revelation that Scott read to you, you wonder, how does that tie in? And then when Rob was teaching Sunday school, the last book in the Bible, Malachi, in the Old Testament, Malachi, he talks about the stubble being burned away. The part of Revelation that I had Scott read is actually the part of judgment on the earth. So what has happened, before anything, there's a 30 minutes of silence in heaven. Now, how do we know there's 30 minutes?
It says so in the Bible.
It says so in the Bible? It says there's 30 minutes in the Bible? I believe, and a lot of you that I spoke with on the side, I believe that time is irrelevant in heaven. But since our poor little human minds can't understand infinity, in fact, I see Tracy smiling because I know Tracy teaches this stuff. And so Tracy, if I ask you, what is infinity? Can you really define it? Can you define infinity to where we can concretely know what it is? No, it cannot be defined. It's just out there. So how do we expect to understand time and place? You see, God is not only omniscient, He's everywhere. He's omnipresent. He's right here in this room. Sometimes He's right here beside you, and sometimes He's hitting you on the shoulder saying, hey, bub, you need to listen to me. And our problem is we don't listen. We have everything going on around us. Too many things going on around us. And you know what we love to do, because we as humans can do this, and this is concrete. What do we have that we can give God that's concrete? What do we have that we give God that's concrete? Our money.
Tithe.
Our tithes, our offering. And those are wonderful. Don't anybody stop that, because that's God's blessing. But let me ask you something. And I use my people because you're friends. We're friends here. And I want to Margaret and Laura are both here today. We've known each other for years, and we're great friends. Laura, would you rather have Margaret's time, or would you rather have her money? Think about that. You ask any of your family members, you ask any of your children, what's the one thing that you can't give them back once it's gone? Time. Time. How many of you have ever said, I'm going to use my dad because a lot of you know I use it. I have never said, not one time since my dad passed away, I had plenty of time with him. I don't ever need to see him again. Never need to see him again. Nobody has ever said, oh, I've had enough time. I'm done. I don't need to see you. I'm done. You see, you can't take it back. You can't get it back. I think about Scott's sister, wasn't it, with the kidney, Scott? Here she is waiting on the kidney transplant, and if it didn't come through, she was out of time, right? All the money in the world wouldn't have mattered. It didn't matter. It doesn't matter what you have. But when someone came through and gave her a kidney, they gave her time. Time to be with her children. Time to be with her family. Time to see grandkids born. Time to see them married. Time. And that's all that God is asking of us. Giving your time. You know, I grew up when, and I'm telling you, before we went in the grocery store, my mama prayed. It always reminds me when David talks about Sandy. She pray, okay, Lord, this is how much money I have. This is how much I need to spend. And I need to get everything I need for this amount. And when I say this these days, because as I was a younger teenager, I remember what her budget was. And there was 8 of us at the house at the time. 8 of us, and her budget for groceries was $40 a week. Now, granted, that was years ago. But still, my mom cooked big meals on $40 a week. My mom could send you to the store and she'd tell you, I need Carnation evaporated milk, and it's 22 cents a can. So you knew if you picked up a can that was 35 cents, that was the wrong can. It's the 22-cent can, and it better be Carnation. Yeah. God, so many times, is trying to tell you something. He's trying to tell you something right now, but you're not listening. We don't want to listen. Well, why don't we want to listen? Because it's a whole lot easier doing it our way at this moment. At this moment. You know, what's interesting is, do you ever hear God say, I told you so? And if it was me, I'd say it all the time. In fact, I said it yesterday. I'll see where Will is, so I'll just go ahead and say it. Somebody got mad yesterday. So we're going up to get tires on his car, and my friends in Dawsonville, and me didn't realize it was a moonshine festival. But I did tell Will, maybe we should go up Highway 9 all the way. No, I want to go 400. I said, Will, they're doing construction out there. Let's go up Highway 9. An hour and a half later, on 53, we finally get there, and I couldn't help it. I couldn't help it. That was the first time I said, I told you so. So not only, but before I said I told you so, I pulled up the map on my little GPS. Highway 9 was as clear as it could be. All the way up into Dawsonville, as clear as it could be. And then you got to go around the little bypass thing and go right into the shop. I held it up and then said, I told you so. And I probably said that 2 or 3 times yesterday. Because I told you so. Isn't it great that God's not like that? Isn't it great that God is not? I told you so. But how many times do we put ourselves? You see, one of our biggest issues right here, and I'm talking to our church, y'all, so if you get mad at me, just get mad at me and get over it. Our biggest issue, it's not a money issue. It's not a money problem. Our biggest issue is a time problem. And let me tell you, everybody that's here right now, I'm preaching to the choir because you're here. But you're important. When you don't take the time to be here, what message does that send? The things that are important to you, you really do. There is nothing that you really want to do that you can't do. You don't put yourself out there if you don't really want to do it. And let me tell you, there are many times on Sunday morning that bed feels better than it did all week long. It's just warmer, your back hurts worse, your leg hurts worse, and you just want to stay in bed. But then you get this little nudge like, hey, you need to get up and go to church. Why? Why? Why do we need to get up and go to church? Because for 6 days out of the week, for 6 days, God has given you 6 days that you can work, that you can play, that you can do whatever. All He's asking is for an hour on Sunday. How many times? In fact, this just came to my mind. Where's Kathy? Is my song person that helps me. So you'd think with so much music in my head, I remember, but I can't remember the name. Cats in the Cradle.
Harry Chapin.
Who?
Harry Chapin.
Harry Chapin. Harry Chapin. Cats in the Cradle. The whole song, the man doesn't have time for his kid. He's out making a living. He's making money. He's making sure his kid has what he wants. But the song ends with the man. All he wants is his child's attention. And the child says, okay, Dad, I'll come over soon. I promise you I'll come soon, but I'm out making money. I'm out supplying for my family. Time, people. God wants us. He wants our time. He's trying to tell you something. When my dad passed, a lot of you have been in my home, and you know I had these 2 chairs, they're king chairs, big old chairs. I love those chairs. Right, the year before Dad passed, he came up, and Mom, to fish the lake. My dad couldn't walk, even at the time, good. And Bob brought his boat up, and we helped Dad get in the boat laboriously. But we got him in the boat, and we caught 1 fish that day, wasn't it, Bob? And Bob caught it. Dad had the best day he had had in years. And he sat at the house, and he sat in that chair, and I sat in the other one. And so, after Dad was gone, for a long time I would sit in the chair, and Duchess would sit in the other one, and she'd just do like this as I talked to my dad, and she looked at me like she was understanding what I'm saying. But when I moved, those chairs were so big that they wouldn't go. And I had to sell them. And for a long time, y'all, nothing was just the same. I would sit on one end of the sofa and say, okay, I'm going to talk to my dad today, I'm going to be with him today, and it just wasn't the same. And I had to come to a place where I realized, wait a minute, my dad, nothing about that chair was my dad. Nothing about this place or that place. What was my dad was those 51 years that he had put into my life. I can't tell you the things he has bought for me, the things he gave me. But I'd trade everything in the world for those moments I had with my dad. You see, I can do the things I do because my dad taught me. The other day I was with Bob and we were doing something and swinging a hammer, and I just stopped and I said, Bob, I just heard my dad say, son, there's a handle on that hammer for a reason. Because you see, I would grab the hammer up next to the head, and if I'd hold it back here, I'd get more. I just heard that. I heard my dad. And let me tell you something. There is no amount of money in the world that can replace that. Let me tell you now, there is no amount of things in this world that can replace your relationship with God. Because God is the only person that you have that knows the innermost workings of your heart. He knows the front side and the back side of your heart, and he still loves you. We've got to give more of ourselves to him who loved us, even though he knew us. There's a song, an old song, it's a hymn that we sung here once, and not many people knew it, but it says, how about your heart? Is it right with God? And then in the verse of how about your heart, there's words that say, if my heart had a window that people could see through, what would they think of me? Wow. Have you ever thought about, what if you walked around and right above your head was this little bubble? And when you met someone, in this little bubble, the thoughts that you thought, they could see it. Now, okay, think about that. Let me tell you, any thought you have pops up like a little bubble and God sees it. God knows you. He knows who you are. He knows the things you've done. And still, he loves you. He wants his time. He misses his time with you. He misses it. He wants to be with you. When you are troubled, when you are upset, when you're hurting, God wants to wrap his arms around you. It's you who are running from God, not him who's running from you. God is trying to tell you something right now. Right now, he's trying to tell you. What's in the past is in the past. Everything you've done is in the past. It doesn't matter. What's in the future, you have control of. You can make a difference. And God is waiting for you. He's waiting. There's a story told of a young girl, and I relate as a father, I relate to this. She was 16, and she was in a nice home in Ann Arbor. And her parents, she felt like they were always trying to tell her what to do. You know? Don't tell me what to do. Just give me a car. Give me money. Give me. Don't tell me what to do. So finally, her father said, this is it. You live in our house under our rules. This is it. And so, angry, she walks out the door, slams the door behind her, and she says, I'll show you. And she leaves and heads for Detroit. She was only in Detroit just a few hours when she met a man in a big, shiny car. And the man, realizing that she was young, realized that men would pay to be with her. And he farmed her out, a 16-year-old girl, and took all the money that he could get from her. He was using her. This girl who had left and said, I'm tired of it, I will make it on my own. And she stayed out there until she got sick. And when she was sick, she knew she couldn't go back home. But she stayed selling herself for money just to get her drugs, just to eat a little. And finally, after 2 years, here she is just turned 18. After 2 years, she calls her parents home. And two times, she gets the answer machine. The third time she calls, and finally she says, Dad, I'm sick. I know I don't deserve you. I don't deserve what I had. But I'm coming home on the bus. I'll be there in about 7 hours. And if you're not there, if you don't want me, I'll understand. And I'll just go away. And the whole time on the bus, she was running through her mind things, how they might happen. Don't we all do that? Don't you? Everybody does that. Oh, well, this might happen, or that might happen, or this may work out this way or that way. The whole time she's running these things through her head. She pulls into the bus station and gets out of the bus to walk into the station while she gets her bag. And there's about 70 people in the station. Aunts, uncles, her mother, her father, her brothers, her sisters. And they had a big banner, welcome home. And she goes up to her dad, who wraps her in his arms. And she starts, Dad, he says, hush. I don't want to hear it. We don't have time for this. We've got to move on. We've got a big party planned at home. We've got a big dinner planned at home. That's done. Welcome home. Isn't that just like God? Isn't that just the way God does us? No matter what you've done in the past, where you've been. He says, I don't want to hear it. I've always loved you. I never went anywhere. I've been right here the whole time. Welcome home. I'm going to close with this. Just in case you don't get it yet, one final story. I want you to go home if you are on YouTube, and I want you to look up Birth of a Giraffe. Let me tell you how a giraffe is born. When it's time for mama giraffe to give birth, she finds a flat, hard place in the dirt. No grass, no bushes, nothing. And everybody knows how tall giraffes are. When it's time for this baby calf to be born, she stands there on the hard, packed dirt, and the calf is born, and he drops sometimes as much as 10 feet. Bam! And he hits the ground. And he lays there. And when he doesn't move, the mama giraffe goes and hauls off and kicks him as hard as she can. Kicks him to the other side of the dry patch. And if he still doesn't move, she goes over there and she kicks him again. And finally he wobbles and he gets up. And as soon as he's on his feet, She goes over and kicks him down. She knocks him down. And finally he gets up. And you see, it looks mean. We think, what is she doing? Mama knows that it's better for him to learn how to stand on his own feet when she's there than when a lion is chasing him. You see, that's the way it is with God. Sometimes he has to show us this is what you've got to do. You've got to be strong. You've got to get up. You can't just lay there and wallow in your self-pity. You've got to get up. Get up again. Get up again. Get up again. Don't stop. And then from that moment on, Mama cares for that baby. She stands guard over that baby because she has taught him, just as God has taught each of us. Trust in me. I know your heart. I know who you are. I haven't gone anywhere. I'm here. Come back to me. Give me your time. Give me your time. Welcome home. Let's pray. Father, I thank you today, Lord, that no matter where we've been, no matter what we do, that you love us. You see us just as we are inside, Father. You know our hearts, Lord, and yet you still love us. And no matter what our past is, our future is yet unwritten. And Lord, the past is gone. But you are there for us, to walk hand in hand with us, to watch over us, to guide us, to wrap your loving arms around us and welcome us home. Father, I pray before we have to go through hard knocks and hard temptations, that we listen to you, that we get quiet, that we hear your voice, Lord. And that though the storm is raging around us, Father, that you keep us right in the center, right in the eye. Perfect calm, perfect peace. Father, let us turn our hearts to you, our minds to you, our gifts to you. Let us give back to you just a fraction of what you've given to us. In your name we pray.